right, welcome everyone to our last session for today. So we hope you had just a good productive day on day one. So if you had a productive day, like if I can just, raise your hand, a good day, learn some things you're going to be able to take back and implement, in your agencies and organizations. So we're super excited today to have the Department of Labor Employment and Training Association with us here today, and they will be talking about some of the things that are going on with the Department of Labor. So we're excited to have them. I will let them introduce themselves, but if you can all just help me welcome them to the stage, the Department of Labor.
Well, thank you, Kimberly, for that wonderful introduction. I'm going to figure out how to move this microphone out. There we go. All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you all for being here for the last session of the day. We're so glad that you're here to join us as we take some time out this afternoon to talk about ETA Vision 2030 and how youth employment works strategies is an integral part of the department's focus for building up our workforce for the future. My name is Renata Ajibodu. I'm the Acting Regional Administrator for the Atlanta Regional Office, and I'm joined by several of my colleagues who will introduce themselves as we go through our panel. Our format for this afternoon is for me to provide a few minutes of an overview on our ETA Vision 2030. Then we'll turn it over to our panel to have a conversation about how our systems align within ETA in order to really implement and effectuate the vision that we have for within ETA. This is going to be interesting. I'm going to need you to click.
No problem.
Thank you. All right. The ETA 2030 vision at the Labor Department, the Secretary's vision boils down to one simple idea: empowering all workers morning, noon, and night, which means investing in and value the nation's care economy, building a modern, inclusive workforce, supporting a lifetime of worker empowerment, and which also means that we cannot leave young people behind. Stay there. The Youth Employment Work Strategy is ETA's 2030 vision, includes a dedicated strategy for youth and young workers. The youth strategy is a case study in service delivery and engagement for all target audiences, and focuses on how we can coordinate all of our systems required for youth to be successful and to launch young people, especially those in the hardest to serve areas, into high-quality careers and career pathways. Next slide, please. Our 2030 vision is based on 4 pillars. I'm going to walk through these 4 pillars and emphasize within them the youth emphasis in each of these 4 categories. The first is opening up opportunities for vulnerable workers and communities, which means ensuring that our programs focus on workers and communities who have been left behind, from re-entry to rural opportunities, to rural programs and opportunity youth. This is important, especially important for opportunity youth as a specific vulnerable population that intersects with a number of our communities, marginalized communities and groups in various categories. We know that in times of economic hardship, young people, especially those in rural communities or with less access to thriving business sectors, are often the last to recover, and so ensuring our workforce efforts are intentional about their needs is where we need to focus our attention. Guaranteed work experiences, especially paid work experiences, including registered apprenticeships for youth, on-the-job training, and paid internships, are experiences that transform the lives and career trajectory of our young people. For youth to succeed in their career journeys, there should be no wrong door entry. We need to have a seamless system for all of our young people in order to take advantage of all the opportunities that are available and should be available for our vulnerable populations. We are also focused on building new industry partnerships that lead to real good jobs. This means brokering and building partnerships with business and training providers and workers to ensure youth have awareness of and access to training and career pathways that lead to good jobs across sectors, whether they're infrastructure, manufacturing, education, and others. As ETA continues to build new industry partnerships, our commitment to clarifying and diversifying high-quality career pathways and investing in potential of young people is a key aspect to these partnerships. Third is building a care economy and being intentional about how we do that. With a care economy, we can often think about healthcare workers in a healthcare industry in a vacuum. Our focus with a care economy is that we're looking from child care through elder care, for health care, for mental health, in all aspects of the healthcare industry is where we know we need to place attention to be able to support our young people and to support the workers of the future, not just for their career path opportunities, but also for the benefits that those services provide to them. As we know, during the pandemic, the majority of our young people were disconnected. And we know that there's an increase in mental health services that are needed for our young people in particular, but not exclusively. Having a focus on building our health care or building a care economy is a key area for the department to support for our young people and for all workers. And finally, we're focused on taking action today for the future of work, which means engaging local leaders in the private sector now to prepare, support, and invest in workers and communities to prepare for jobs for future and emerging industries. Growing the economy and staying competitive requires investing in and preparing a generation of young people with the skills to meet existing and emerging and future work needs. In many regards, the young generation offers an opportunity to accelerate America's competitiveness by leveraging inherent comfort with their readiness in foundational skills and technologies and digital environments. The future of work requires that young workers are intentionally considered and strong career pathways are created so that we can all succeed in America's economy. Next slide, please. So why Department of Labor? Why are we talking about this now? We acknowledge that it has been several years, since probably 2003, since we've been intentional and focused on leading conversations around services for young people. We know that, as I said earlier, the young people are often disconnected, and that disconnection has persisted since the pandemic. We know that 10% of the young people aged 16 to 24 are disconnected from school and work, and that those pre-pandemic levels of unemployment have increased since the pandemic ended, assuming that it has fully ended. DOL's recent leadership was, again, as I said, in 2003 and 2005, and it has been since the Youth Opportunity Grants that we were really intentional about wanting to pay and needing to pay attention to services for young adults. We recognize that it has been a number of years, but we know that in order for us to really be a viable factor in building up our workforce, that we need to engage young people in doing so, and that we need to be intentional about how we go about serving the youth of the future. Next slide, please. So what do we need to consider to be successful? These are strategies I'm sure you have heard throughout the day and that you'll hear going forward. Guaranteed paid work experience. Every young person needs a high-quality career pathway, aligned work experiences, and those work experiences need to be paid so that we know that they know that we value their work and their worth. Business commitment to youth, making sure that we have strong sector partnerships with our workforce system, with our business community, to build those career pathways so that the jobs that are developed are enduring and long-standing and long-lasting. And finally, a seamless approach with no wrong door that provides supportive services, education, training, and workforce development opportunities. These are three critical areas where we see it's important for our youth programs to be successful in providing services for our young people. Next slide. There are 4 areas or levers for change that we wanted to focus on as part of how we've envisioned implementing our 2030 vision for youth, and particularly our youth employment work strategy. First, on vision and guidance. We issue training and employment notices, training and employment guidance letters, funding opportunities, all of which provide guidance and help to set a North Star for the direction that we're taking to build up a youth service strategy. Ensuring that we have career pathway sectors and engagements with our private sector and working with youth and young people to build up those career pathways and career sectors. Promoting best practices and ensuring that we are, as we're researching best practices, as we become aware of them, as you share your stories, that we're making space available to promote those effective practices so that they can be replicated across the country, and we continue our growth and services for young people. The fourth is our DOL housekeeping, which is really around how we're working to build up our own staff, internal capacity and knowledge within the department while we're working with our partners externally. Throughout these 4 levers, we have 2 core values: implementing and embedding equity in all that we do. You'll hear, you have heard, you will continue to hear about DEIA. We know that it's a priority for the administration. It is a running theme in all of the work, all of the guidance, the funding opportunity announcements, the strategies that we're discussing internally within the department. It's embedded within all of our conversations. And secondly is having that youth voice, ensuring that there's a focus on youth empowerment in how we look to build up our key actions and tasks going forward. And our next slide, our last slide, I think we skipped ahead. With all of our activities in providing our technical assistance, you have heard earlier today about the Next Level Now, our format for providing technical assistance. I wanted to just take a couple of seconds to kind of plug that one last time to say that yes, WIOA can provide those services. Yes, WIOA can provide the supportive services that are needed, develop the partnerships that are needed, and work with our system to help build those connections and career pathways to make sure that we're providing comprehensive services collectively to the young people in our country. The Next Level Now website is available on Workforce GPS. We know that our National Association of Workforce Development Professionals, our National Association of Workforce Development Boards, and SAFO partners, as well as third sector, are all part of the partnership that comprise Next Level Now, and this is a primary place to make your requests for technical assistance. If you have a question on how to improve or develop a partnership for youth in a particular sector, go to the website, type in that question. That information, if it already exists, will be provided to you in relatively short order, If it doesn't exist, we'll collect it and work together. We are working closely with the Next Level Now partnership to develop training where necessary and provide the resources that we can to be as responsive to all the questions and requests for technical assistance that come forward. I'm going to close my section of our overview on ETA's 2030 vision and turn it over to our esteemed panel. I'll start with Stephanie Rodriguez to help us get started on our conversation going forward.
Thank you, Renata. So, hi everybody, my name's Stephanie Rodriguez. I'm a senior workforce fellow in the Employment and Training Administration's Office of the Assistant Secretary, and I have had the great privilege to work across ETA to help our administration think through what a comprehensive youth employment strategy looks like. And you heard sort of the top level from Renata over the last few minutes, but really excited to dig into some discussion with experts from across the Employment and Training Administration about what all of that really looks like. So I think we'll start with a round of introductions from across the panel, and maybe Penny, we'll start with you down on the end there.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Oh, come on, you can do better than that. Good afternoon, everyone. That's much better. I know it's the last session of the day, but I'm Penny Webster Lewis, and I'm a very proud regional director for the Atlanta Regional Office of Job Corps.
Tell us a little bit about Job Corps, Penny.
Okay, if you haven't, who's heard about Job Corps before? Woo, I'm excited, that's so good. A lot of times it's crickets or no hands at all, but it is the largest federally funded program for young out-of-school, mostly out-of-school youth, 16 to 24, and we provide an array of services in over 100 career fields, 10 industry sectors. We are the only residential program for youth 16 to 24, so our students live on campus, play on campus, they receive a stipend while they're in training, they get real experiential learning, they do work-based learning, and we provide all the wraparound services, including placement and post-placement follow-up, as well as housing support, transportation support, so all of the wraparound services you would think of. And there are 121 centers located across the United States. And in the southeastern United States, which I'm the regional director for the 7 southeastern states, we have 17 centers.
Thanks, Penny. Go ahead, Sarah.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me okay? How is everyone? Let's get some hands. I know we're up here. We can hardly see you because the lights are hitting us in the eyes, but I think you're out there. I think I can hear people. We are so happy to be here with you all. I was saying to Kim and Melissa earlier that it's been many years since I've been at NADEP, and Chicago, many cold winters we've probably gathered over the years. So happy to be here. Sarah Hastings. I am in the Office of Workforce Investment. Within that, I'm in our Division of Youth Services, and I, along with my team, we oversee the WIOA, W-I-O-A, Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act Youth Program. How many folks know WIOA Youth Program? Do we have everybody's hand up? I figured. You are our workforce system, but we do know that there are new folks coming in. I was talking to Melissa earlier, and we know we have new workforce professionals that come in every year, and so sometimes WIOA, you may not call it WIOA in your community, you might call it something else, and so sometimes it's nice to hear kind of where WIOA sits. So WIOA legislation passed in 2014, we oversee from the Department of Labor, funds go to our states, and then states down to the local workforce development boards to provide a bunch of services to young people, 14 to 21 in-school youth, 16 to 24 out-of-school youth, with priorities on serving out-of-school youth, and also priorities on work experience. And as Renata was saying earlier, we're really encouraging work experiences for that are paid when we can. So I sit in the Division of Youth Services, but the Office of Workforce Investment, I'm not sure if others are familiar, but we have a lot of other programs in the department and within the Office of Workforce Investment. So we've got our adult and dislocated worker programs. We've got our Division of Native American programs, DINAP. And we've got a bunch of other discretionary grant programs that come out of them. So you all may be recipients of many of those different discretionary grant programs. One thing I wanted to just check in on to see how many folks are familiar with our resources. As Renata was saying, we have two main ways of communicating with you all. One is around guidance, training and employment guidance letters, TEGLs. How many have read TEGLs over the years? Yep, that's us. We have TEGLs, and then we have training employment notices, and then we have our technical assistance. So those are the two kind of buckets of ways in which we kind of work with all of you. So our TEGLs and TENS, and then our technical assistance that comes through the workforcegps.org. Ask for your hands again. How many folks are signed up for workforcegps.org? Great. So we do communicate with you all that way, and we're so happy. We're always looking to hear from you all. You know, we have webinars, we communicate with you in a bunch of different ways. So we're happy to be here today. And, you know, when we get a chance, we want to hear from you to hear what kind of TA needs you guys have, how we can be responsive to you all. So please do reach out to us either through Workforce GPS, youth.services@dol.gov. We often communicate that with you all whenever we can, because we want to hear what it is that you all need and how we can be supportive to you in your work, and also where there are bright spots and good things that are going on in the communities. And you guys are those examples, so we love to hear from you and love to hear what's going on. So that's me and our office and where we sit, and I will pass it along.
Great. Hi, can everyone hear me? All right, great. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Molly Boucher. This is a funky sort of way to talk. Hi. Hi, I'm Molly Boucher, and now I'm louder. I'm a policy advisor in ETA's front office. I have maybe a less storied history and maybe a little bit narrower focus in the youth space. I'll say my attention is a little bit split across priorities, but I hope to be able to bring some of that expertise to this conversation to sort of help us all branch out of just, you know, the bucket of what youth has been or has been said that it must be, and to articulate a couple of other ways where some new funding streams, some exciting opportunities are percolating in the workforce development space more broadly, and how we can make sure that youth gets a slice of that. So to be a little bit more particular and just explain that a little bit more. So I work on some youth work, but I also work on our infrastructure work. I work on some of our conversations with, also with Job Corps, but a lot of the infrastructure work has been a lion's share of where I've been spending a lot of my time since the bipartisan infrastructure law was signed into law last year. And that early implementation of that legislation has been just sort of percolating in the government across a number of different departments. And, you know, the ones that you might have heard of and are always in the news about, you know, they're sending out this grant announcement, they're sending out this millions of dollars into this initiative, and oh, they're looking for workers, and they're standing up a new program, and there's a lot of movement, and there's so many things running around with transportation, commerce, with energy, all these different departments. But with all these things running around, it's kind of hard to parse, even at the federal level, what's going on and how to make sure that we are nimble and are at the right place at the right time as the Department of Labor. And so recognizing that, we've been doing a tour of sorts with our state, regional, and local partners to make sure that we are also articulating as this whirlwind is happening at the federal level, to make sure that those opportunities are as plain as possible for practitioners and for people and also for program staff and anyone who is sort of implementing the on-the-ground and touching the programs that are actually having impact in the lives of young people, to make sure that those opportunities, frankly, are accessible, are understandable, are at your fingertips as much as we can allow for that connection to happen. So I'll stop there.
Thanks, Molly. Thanks, Sarah. Thanks, Penny. So as I think you can get a sense, we what we're really trying to do on this panel is demonstrate what it looks like when the Department of Labor and when ETA gets intentional about breaking down silos across all of the work that we're doing together. And you see someone, there's some words that people used while on stage here. Nimble was one of the words. And so I think what I'll start with is what I hope people took away from the overview that Renata gave is this Vision 2030 is really looking at how we connect the dots across the workforce system, the wraparound services that young people need to be successful. So why don't we kick off our discussion with you all sharing a little bit more about what USDOL is doing to encourage this no wrong door systems approach. What does that look like in practice for you all as we're talking about no wrong door?
Yeah, I can kick off. So I think, we covered a little bit of this in the initial conversation where Renata really set us up talking about our youth strategy and talking about Vision 2030 and how we're sort of setting the stage of where we're going next. How are we making sure that we're incorporating youth? How are we making sure that we, as the workforce system at the federal level, are having a more fulsome conversation that is easily digestible and not sort of wonky and in a funky sort of workforcey space that doesn't fully engage the communities that we want to reach and talk to. That's my very official title of how we do our work at the federal level. And so in that sense and in that spirit, we've actually launched a new initiative. It's called Yes, WIOA Can. As everyone's familiar, WIOA is a mammoth of a program, of a piece of legislation, taking in 1,000 pages or so. There's a lot in there, and there's a lot in there for one person to even maintain in their head, and there's a lot in there to maintain as you're actually thinking about, what does the law say, and then how do I actually implement that, and how do I serve the people that need the services that I have access to and that I can explain to them. So acknowledging that and acknowledging that WIOA is just such a bear in so many senses, we have decided to take a step back and sort of help message to our partners, and I'm including all of you in that conversation as our partners and as the people spreading the word about how the workforce system works and how it can reach the people it needs to, about how do we demystify what WIOA is, what WIOA can do, and what it's allowed to do. We've heard a lot from people on panels just like this that, WIOA says you can't do that. You can't make that partnership, or you can't offer those services to those people in this way. You have to do it this way, and this is the ABC of how we've always done it, because maybe we had our hand slapped when we tried to do it one way before. After hearing all of that, we sort of went back to the drawing board and have talked about how do we make sure that we get the actual ABCs of what WIOA says you can do, and also not only turn over the facts to you all, but also encourage you all to be freer in your interpretation of these initiatives and of these services and how you are offering these opportunities through your programs and through your partnerships. Encouraging innovation, not leading from a place of fear, but leading from a place of what we could do and sort of excitement. Government can be a little bit bogged down in bureaucracy, and we're trying to make sure that we can shed some of that.
No, you don't say.
Yeah, I know.
Never heard of that.
I know, surprise.
We're not bureaucrats.
So we're trying to see how we can sort of unleash the opportunity that is, not to make it cutesy, but that is in the title of the act, and to make sure that that is in the spirit of innovation and opportunity. You all feel that opportunity to actually move forward and to be a little bold.
But I think importantly, like what Renata shared and what you've been sharing is that it's not just a catchy slogan, right? Yes, WIOA can. It's really cute to say. It rolls off the tongue, but it's partnered with that next level now, Technical Assistance Academy, and a lot of other strategies, right, around how we really uplift guidance and practices to support the system. But Sarah, I think you have some other points here. Yeah.
Yes. WIOA can. Yes. The deputy secretary actually kind of kicked off this campaign maybe about a month ago or so, and I know all of us at the Department of Labor were really excited to kind of think about WIOA in this way and really talk about some of the ways in which we could help as you were saying, Molly, demystify. I mean, I often, when I'm out on the road, the one thing I hear from folks is like, WIO is really challenging. That is true. Yes, and we also know that there are ways we can help really break down barriers and think about ways in which we can really help to clarify policies for you all, work through some challenges and barriers to implementation. And so we see this as another opportunity to really have conversations with folks. I've worked on an effort for a number of years called Performance Partnership Pilots. You may have heard of P3 over the years, and the only reason I'm bringing this up is because what P3 does is allows communities to think about their resources in a more broad and flexible way, and it allows folks to use their resources in ways they've never been able to do, and it opens up doors for conversations. And so when we've asked people to say, you tell us at the federal government how we can sort of help you get rid of barriers, remove burden, administrative burden, and give you some more flexibility with the resources that you get. Tell us what that looks like and how we can help you. And often we had communities get together, they started to look at, all right, well, you have these resources, we have these resources. How do we make them work and leverage them together so that we can get better outcomes? Where are those barriers that keep us from partnering, and why are our resources, our programs not aligning as much as we want them to? And while there were some real barriers that were at the federal level, perhaps they are in statute or they're in regulations, many times there were issues that were maybe at the state level or at the local level, or even it was one of those things where people said, that's just how we've always done it. We've always done it that way. Everybody's always said we can't do it the other way. So that's how we've done it. And we have seen this as a barrier. And so we've asked folks, tell us where in statute or in the regs it says you can't do this. And what folks often came up with, well, it's not that easy. And in fact, actually, we had a conversation with our state health and human services partner, and there's some flexibility there that we could get from the state DHS, or we talked to the education system. And it opened up a lot of conversations about what could be done. And so, again, yes, WIO can. There is a lot of flexibility in the law, even though it oftentimes can feel really cumbersome. There's a lot of resources and documents and things that young people need to show up when they come to you to say, I'm eligible for this program. But let's think about what that looks like. How can we do that different? And if it's a federal issue and it's something we can do about, please do tell us. We want all of us to kind of work together and think about, there are 4 million, we know probably more, young people that are opportunity youth, disconnected, out of school, out of work. WIO serves 150,000 a year. So if you do the math, it's not enough, right? We don't have enough resources for WIO to be the answer for everything. And so it really is about how do we think about our partners and be strategic in the way we align our resources. How do we line them up, figure out those ways that like eligibility may be bumping up against, challenges with one program or another. Have the conversations with the folks who provide the funding, either, at the federal level, at the state level, if it's your local board. Let's think about breaking down some of these barriers and think about why can't we? Why can't we do this? And hopefully we can get to, yes, WIO can do this. And it's just a helpful way to, frame it and think about it. And I know this administration is really interested in saying we have to have equity be at the forefront. What's in the best interest of our young people? Start with that as the question, and then let's work to get rid of some of those barriers that we can. And at all levels, we want to partner with you on that. So that's I think there's a lot of opportunity here, and I'm excited about sort of reframing the way we do our work.
And I couldn't agree more, because once upon a time, I've been in the program, the Job Corps program, for a very long time, and I've watched it evolve. Once upon a time, everything was done contained within that center or the program, and there wasn't the outreach or partnerships with other educational entities to provide some of the education and training that our young people need, because it's great to have a skill, but with the higher skilled workforce or higher skilled jobs, we have to make sure the students have the ability to learn those skills and be able to perfect them to use it in the 21st century workforce. So we partner with high schools, we partner with community colleges, we partner with industry, we partner with labor unions that do some of the hard skilled trades, we partner with the Office of Apprenticeship, we partner with the Women's Bureau. Partnerships are the key. While we're not necessarily grant programs, we operate mostly through contracts, which are competitive. And those they also partner to get the strategic edge or have the competitive edge to win their contract, because they're going to offer our students much more than the typical Job Corps program. So the key to all of this is, yes, because we are a WIOA funded program as well. We're authorized from WIOA. So there are things that we must do, but there's also a lot of things that we can do. And together, if we talk to each other about what resources can the Job Corps program bring to bear in your community if a center is in your community, and what resources the community can bring to bear to enhance the opportunities for the students that we serve. So I couldn't agree with Sarah more. It's all about trying to figure out what it is that we can do instead of saying we can. So yes, WIOA can.
And I think across all three of these examples,
hit it enough?
right? Yes, WIOA can. Yes, what? Yes, WIOA can. Okay, but I think though built into that, right, that you all really hit on is this power of partnership and this reframing of the federal, state, local relationship, and really thinking not only about how USDOL issues guidance, but how do we hear from you all what that guidance should be, and how do we tailor the technical assistance and the resources that we're putting out to be the most effective on the ground. And we've also heard a lot around this power of partnership in the community as well. And I think, you know, as I think about the context setting Renata gave us, sort of all of those key levers of DOL's youth strategy were wrapped around these core values of inclusion. And so I'm curious if we can touch a little bit on, you know, the centrality of equity and how DOL is really centering ourselves to serve all young people. And so maybe Sarah, I'm not sure if you want to kick us off a little bit, but I think there's a lot of great work happening out of OWI.
Sure, yeah. I mean, you know, we have been talking about equity for many, many years, and I think it's built into our program. I think all of you would say that that's a core value. I mean, we serve the hardest to serve young people within a WIOA. It's built into the eligibility. And to be able to serve those who are most in need, we have to continue to work harder and smarter. We have to work, again, with our partners to think about how do we connect with the foster care system. Yes, you know, WIOA serves more out-of-school youth. We know that in-school youth are or foster youth are typically more in school because they're required to be in school, right? And so how do we think about our limited resources to align these programs and those resources for that specific population? Again, with the justice system, similarly, we want to make sure that we're partnering with our justice system, again, thinking about prevention services, right? Our lunch speaker was talking about the school that would, or the institution that wouldn't kick him out because he was not there voluntarily. So the justice system is a key partner, and we want to, you know, think about their resources that they have, and maybe preventive resources and recidivism opportunities there. One thing I think we've been doing to try to help think about equity is to, again, look at your policies and your programs, and what kind of policies do we have in place for young people. One of the things that we often hear the most about WIOA, or I do when I'm out talking to folks, is that the documentation is challenging for young people. Let's see, raising hands, how many folks feel like documentation for eligibility purposes can be a challenge for folks on the ground? So,
We got a double hand raise over there.
yes. And, this is something we've been talking to folks about for a long time, and recently. I know we're probably running out of time because we want to give you guys a chance to ask questions. So let me say this quickly. It is a huge issue. It's something we've been talking about for a long time. How many people read from Teagle 2319, change 1? I saw hands raised. Who's read it?
We got 10 hands up.
Okay, well, what we say in Teagle 2319 is that DOL encourages grant recipients to consider the impacts on equity and accessibility when developing their source documentation policies and procedures. And what that means is that when you are thinking about the young people you're serving, that while other documentation sources are preferable, when practical, self-attestation is an important option for populations to obtaining eligibility and reporting documents. That says when a young person comes in your door and says, I've been sleeping on the street, I don't have any documentation, I need your help, you do not say, I need you to give me your documentation before we start helping you. Okay, we don't want you to send people away. It's very likely this young person is not, having some sort of bank account that they're not telling you about, and they're actually doing okay, but they really want to get into this WIOA youth program. We understand that these young people are not going to have the documentation in hand. Self-attestation is an option, and then it's an option, it's a tool as it relates to equity. We want young people to be able to know that they're in a safe place. We want to put the young person first. They absolutely are going to need driver's license or an ID for a job. They're absolutely going to need their birth certificate at some point, right? They're absolutely going to need these resources, these documentations to move forward and be successful in life, but they do not need to have it the day they walk in the door if they are truly in need. So we want you to look at your policies in place. We want you to have a positive youth development approach to serving young people so that we do not scare them. Day one, they should not be coming in and you're asking them every, private question about their lives and how hard it is when they walk in the door. That's not good youth workforce development and positive youth development. However, we've got these forms to fill out, right? What we want you to do is to go back and think about how are our programs really working for the young people we serve, and let's work our way back to make sure we're meeting our requirements, we're being compliant, yes, but we want to be serving young people. So this was a big win, I'll say, to get this language in there, that self-attestation. So now self-attestation is a valid source documentation for every eligibility documentation that we ask for eligibility. We also ask for reporting on low income, but you don't necessarily need to be low income to be to the program. Again, work to get these important documents for young people because it'll be good for them to have them and you can have them on file. You do not have to have them day one. So again, thinking that's just one example of ways we can be more equitable to serve the hardest to serve, because those are the kids that are hurting the most when we say, sorry, you gotta go back and get those documents and then come when you're all ready. So that's just an example. I could keep going on and on, but I will move on.
Go ahead, Penny.
I was just going to add to that. With our program, it's a little different in terms of the eligibility criteria, but a lot of self-attestation has always been an option in the Job Corps program, so that's a good
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
So I'm glad you borrowed it. No, I'm
Well,
teasing.
we've had it, but it hasn't been as clear, and I think
Clarifying.
people are nervous. Are you nervous? Everybody's nervous. We're all nervous. We don't have the right documentation. So
Yes.
it's good to like,
The other thing that I
The
was going
monitor,
to
so I
say-
just want to call out what I heard in the audience was about monitors citing us for that. And
Okay.
so I'll just put a flag, when you saw about our key levers around DOL housekeeping, that this Yes We Owe a Can is also an internal strategy as well. That is about how are we out on the field reinforcing these allowabilities and demystifying and relieving you all of some of that fear that may have come with the previous monitoring rounds.
And I think Renata touched on that when she talked about our training for ourselves, our internal training for federal staff, because I have an entire crew of federal staff that do oversight for the Job Corps program, and they visit every center, and they do assessments, and they do site, but we have to educate our staff, and that's a part of the entire process, is to make sure we uplift the federal staff for providing the oversight.
Are you going to ensure that the states are getting the same message as your internal monitor?
right, I think,
Most of us are self-granted.
yep.
So I think this is a great time to just kick it into the questions, but I would love, I'm not sure if we have any mics around, but if I can restate the question as we're doing that. It was a question about in what ways will we get this information down to the states? Is that a good synopsis?
Yeah, I mean, I think the large majority of us get monitored from the states, and one of the traditional sightings for me that have been in 3 states now, traditionally our states cite us for having, there you go,
There you are.
for having self-attestation. So it's good to, if that's going to the states, I know our monitors will be very happy to bring that up to our state,
Yeah.
because that has traditionally been an issue with equity of low-income people not having the documents, but you also can't
Yep.
use self-attestation. I know a question I have is as we talk about the best-kept secret and talk about reaching a disconnected population, another issue that we've had is the inability to utilize our funds, our WIOA funds, for non-traditional outreach, like mobile apps, streaming. That's traditionally been prevented by our state, but then they're asking on why are we not serving the population of disconnected youth?
Sure.
Community colleges are on buses, job centers aren't on buses. Community colleges are on Pandora and streaming on Tidal. We're not on Tidal. So how are we
Yeah.
to Renata's point, how are we gonna increase that percentage of people we're served if we're not allowed to engage them where they are?
Yeah. Yes, we owe a can.
There's two,
Yes, please.
I'll start and then I'll pass it on, because I think there's 2 ways that we're trying to make sure states are aware. I spoke about Next Level Now and the TA that's being provided through that forum. The first TA session we did was on outreach versus marketing. There were over 1,000 participants. They had to cap it off because there were too many people who wanted to sit in on that particular session. The reason that particular TA topic came up, it was because it was a common topic across the country, where for every region, every state, when we did our readiness assessments, the common theme was, why can't we use our WIOA money for marketing? Is it really marketing or is it outreach? How much flexibility do we have? If you haven't seen that session, go to the GPS website, Workforce GPS, and look it up. There's guidance there. That's one way we're notifying the states. We're telling the system where there are flexibilities, we're putting it out there through our TA sessions. And I can tell you as a regional administrator that we have calls with our state leaders once a month, every couple of months. That's another place where if you have those issues, share them with your federal project officer so they can put it on the agenda for those state leaders' calls. So we can call attention to TEGL 3-19 change 1 and make sure we're pointing to that language to say, you have more flexibility here. We know this has been raised as a concern, so we can tell our state leaders, while we're having those conversations with our state leaders, we're having those conversations with our staff as well, to make sure that they're looking at it a little differently, that they're not looking to zing you right off the bat. We may pause and ask more questions to make sure there's a common enough understanding of what it is that you have, and that you have the policies in place to support it.
Any other panelists want anything to add here? I see a question here in this back corner, and then in the back here. Yeah. Oh, thank you.
Hi. I work in the Atlanta region, and I would like to ask you all, what do you recommend if you feel that federal policy has been written a certain way, but your state level is saying that's not correct?
Yeah, I think back to Renata's point, and you can certainly jump in. This is probably more your conversation, but I think this is, all of this is about having conversations. It's really about getting in the same room and working through these challenges, because oftentimes, whether it's at the federal level, at the state, or the local level, we all are just trying to do our best. And I think bringing the conversations to say, what are these challenges, and where does it say that we can't do this, and how can we, again, put equity first, put the young people first? What is good positive youth development, good youth workforce development to get the best outcomes for our young people, and then back away from that and start to say, what's my role in helping innovate here? If I'm at the state level and local level. And I think it's more, it's really about having those conversations and trying to come to a common ground with, trying to balance oversight with innovation. And that can be a challenge. And I think it's really about having those conversations and getting really specific with your policies. What are those things that you think might be in the way, and how can we think about it differently?
Yeah, and just to That's a tough one, to be fair and honest. It is going to be a challenging conversation. One thing that we are trying to actively engage in is reimagining how we engage with our state partners at the federal level, how we engage with our state partners, and also including our local partners in those conversations. Now, we do have a sort of a promise, a commitment with our state partners that if we hear about something from a local level, we're not going to just run with it and exclude the state. We cannot affect a substantive change, a sustainable change, if we circumvent one another. So it would come down to having specific examples. Maybe they come up during a monitoring visit or a technical assistance visit that we can then revisit in our conversations with the states and be that facilitator for a more open dialogue to push that envelope and say, please show me where this exists. Help me understand how you're interpreting it that way based on federal law. We can only talk about our federal requirements, and then encourage the states to maybe rethink their policies where they may have unintentional consequences and barriers to ensuring equity. That's the challenge that our deputy secretary has put to our system, that they look at their own policies and identify those places where there are barriers and rethink them, work to eliminate them so that we can have more equitable services.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much, ladies, for being here. I know it may not be the easiest thing for the questions and answers section of it, but I think the sentiment felt from this young man and the lady in the back is that there's a disconnect between you guys at the top and us in the trenches, really. And so I can go to every workshop about engagement and recruiting and how to find people, and the first thing they'll tell you is, if you have food, they'll come to you. And then the first thing that is said, oh, WIOA doesn't cover for food. So, you know.
Yes,
Yes, we owe a can.
But again, it creates this level of how I interpret what I read. And then when I question the funding source, they say, well, they did have a period of questions and answers. Go and read 1,000 and some plus pages, and sorry, you missed that window of opportunity. So it makes it really difficult. Let me share with you a local challenge from Southern California. We added our services on the eligible training provider list for the state because we were working in rural areas, such as like this young man mentioned. The community colleges are not on buses that they can go to you. And so we intentionally became certified so that we could bring some of the training local needs to the populations. And also because the fact that we serve a lot of youth who are affiliated to gangs. And so by telling them, come to us, they would be crossing boundary lines that would put their lives at risk. Well, lo and behold, and I've been doing this in San Bernardino County since 2013, effective as of July 1st of this year, they said, you providers cannot directly offer the occupational skills training to your customers. So you see where I'm going with this. It creates another level of challenges then. How am I going to serve that prospective welder in Needles or that prospective medical office assistant in Yucca Valley? So there's a level of interpretation. I get it. Yes, we owe a can. We always make it work, but it becomes really challenging when they keep saying, we want you to serve more for less.
Thank you. I think that's, I hear you, and I think we all hear how challenging it can be. And I think, you know, this is not to say like, duh, you can totally do this, people. We're educating ourselves. We're trying to think about this in a more innovative way with you. I think we should think about this as like a cultural shift around our work at all levels. And so you guys are the experts. You are the folks that work with the young people, or you work in organizations that do that, and you're representing the challenges. As a former social worker, I always was like, why can't these people understand how challenging it is? How do we get to like making it more seamless and no wrong door approach? It's really complicated though, right? This work is really challenging, particularly around leveraging resources and trying to be creative in all kinds of ways. And so I think it's just a matter of continuing to have conversations. You'll have folks that have interpretations that are different. It's a culture shift, I think, that we can get excited about, you know, really putting young people first and having youth voice in the room. I think is a really good way when we bring people from all levels, federal, state, local. If you have a young person in the room that's really clarifying a challenge, I think you can get people to really come and be more open-minded. And so I think that's the challenge that our deputy secretary put forward for us. So I think, you know, we're excited about the opportunities with that, and we're hoping people will, there's some momentum around this. This is not to say like people just were not getting it, right? Like this is, the language is a little bit more open, and we're excited about thinking about this work in a more innovative way.
Yeah, and I think, Sarah, to the point about, I think what I really took away also is your point around the disconnect, right? And how do you bridge that disconnect between us at a federal level and what's happening on the ground? And that's part of why being present in the youth ecosystems is such a huge part of DOL's youth strategy for Vision 2030, and why it was important for us to acknowledge places where we perhaps have not been as present and have not had our ears open as much in acknowledging the good work that has happened on the ground. So part of that sort of filling in the trench so there's not as much of a disconnect is the work of our Vision 2030 youth strategy, and part of why it will be increasingly critical that you all provide that feedback in forums like Next Level Now if we're missing, right, pieces of that technical assistance that are super critical, especially if us setting that North Star is what changes, right, this dialogue and the tenor of conversations between states and locals as well. I thought we had some question in the middle, perhaps. Yes.
Okay, so you kind of answered mine, but, well, there's not really an answer, but anyways. So I'm kind of piggybacking off what they had as far as how do you talk to the people that are above you that make the decisions, that read the TEQLs and interpret them for themselves, and then you're down here like, that's not really what I read, but okay. Like the self-attestations. So I've noticed a lot, I've heard it a lot, that we can use it, but at a local level, we can't use it. We're not allowed to. So how do I have that conversation? Just ideas about how to have that conversation about, well, we can use it. There's a TEQL now saying that we can use it in sparing situations, but we're still at that point at our local level where they're saying no because the monitors come out and they see it, that we can't use it. So we're not allowed to use one at all. So I'm just wondering, like, what would be a good way to, just any ideas on how to open up that conversation?
Well, short of that, what I would suggest, though, is that you really should consider, one thing to consider is connecting with your regional office through your federal project officer to say something like, I see a need for technical assistance in this area. Do you all have anything planned? Can you organize something around documentation and eligibility? We've heard about this TEQL. Can you give us some training on it and kind of put the impetus with the regional office, because it does a couple of things. It tells the regional office, the administrator, the directors, the federal project officers there, that there's a TA need here, that there is a disconnect. We're getting some barriers that we think should not be in place, and you may be able to help us overcome those barriers by offering technical assistance for the entire region, for a state, for a particular program. This is something we'd like you all to think about, helping us to better serve our participants, because we're seeing there's some challenges here. I do think reaching out to your regional offices is a way to help try to bridge that gap and kind of force a conversation that can be facilitated by the federal office, by the regional office.
Hi, Ms. Renata. Thank you. I've been removed from WIOA for about 3 years, but my background has been 46 years in this, so a lot of this is not new to me. But some things have not changed. And so part of my concern is, one, you started out your program with Vision 2030. So one of my questions is that a vision for 8 years from now, or is this something that's going to happen in the next 2 or 3 years, or is it really 2030? Then the second question is, in working with young people, transportation and food are primary concerns. And I work with young people in Detroit. And so we have an after-school program. And one of the things that we absolutely want to do is feed our young people. And many of them are 18 to 22. The other thing is we have young people 16 to 17 that we cannot put on. I, in my heart, can't put on a bus at night and just won't. So what kind of scenarios do you see to be able to handle that? And then the last question is, young people getting into an apprenticeship program that range in the ages of 18 to 22, who may be basic skills deficient, who have high school diplomas.
Wow.
There's a lot there.
Well, I can take the time frame one, Molly.
Yes.
You can chime in here if I'm getting it wrong. But really, this is a vision for what could happen. It's a 10-year vision. So if the Biden administration started in 2020, this got to work right on day one. So this is a 10-year vision for where the workforce system could be if we are able, right, to realize all of these things that we're talking about together today. So definitely a 10-year plan, looking forward to the future.
Starting
that
yesterday.
was starting 2 years ago.
And implementing it actively now.
Right.
Right.
Yes.
So it's a vision that we have for the future,
That we
not
implement
that we're
now.
waiting to do anything, but we want to set some milestones
Right.
and goalposts for ourselves as a department and for the system to actively work towards as we're getting more intentional about providing services and placing attention on a youth employment strategy.
So question 2, if I summarize, is really around those supportive services and ensuring, especially across those different segments of age ranges of young people, how do we ensure they get those services? Food and specifically food and transportation.
Yes, I think WIOA, Job Corps, our programs, our reentry programs, our adult programs, our youth build programs all allow for supportive services, and we know, those are critical. You can't get young people to their goals without having all of those really important supportive services and those wraparound services. So WIOA and these programs have that built in, and we continue to encourage folks to really not just be an afterthought, but that supportive services are a key program element to help young people succeed. So it's critical. So thinking through how you can partner with your transportation system locally, if that's getting subsidized bus passes, or if you can have ride shares, or some programs I know have gotten vehicles. I don't know how that happens. I shouldn't speak to that because I know our accountants might be a little nervous about vehicles. But I do know that a lot of programs are really creative with thinking about transportation challenges, particularly in rural areas. But transportation is a problem and a challenge for folks in rural and urban areas. Another piece, and I see we're about 6 minutes over. You guys are being very thoughtful, and I'm sure you're kind of getting ready to want it to bust out. So maybe we can start to think about wrapping up here. We just wanted to offer you, if there are more questions, we want to be here for those. We have so if you need to get up and get going, we'll not be offended because we know we're over time, but we're happy to finish answering questions.
Yeah, we actually have maybe 2 more questions, so we have one here, and then we'll let her go, and then anybody else could probably come up and talk to you all afterwards.
Yeah,
Okay.
Sounds good.
Thank you. My name's Nicole Hansen. I represent the Washington state government here today, and I'm hearing a lot of feedback on state government. Confident that it's totally different in every state, but I will say something that I think I've learned in my brief period of time here is that there's been a huge history of mistrust and misunderstanding about the different levels of government and how they interplay. I would just offer giving folks the benefit of the doubt in connecting and saying, hey, you all might not be aware of this, but we want to offer this, hey, we've reached out to region, whatever y'all are in, and we want to let you know that this is happening. I think we're all here to dismantle these systems that aren't working, but to your point of just offering conversation about it, you just don't know what you don't know. And be a thorn in people's side. And we were very persistent about asking about if we could change eligibility processes, and like lo and behold, it fell from the sky one day in a Tegel. You know, like the more that you do ask and ask, like I think there is a possibility for change, but you know, I just understand that like there's a major frustration about how the change moves up, and like it is slow. But like please do reach out to your state folks like again and again and again, and CC everyone, and someone will get this message, and I hope that they do respond. And apologies on behalf of all of the state government that is like so slow to get back, but like we do try, to your point, as well as the feds. We're very, we would love to see things happen more quickly at the federal level from the state level, and I'm confident that it only trickles down, but yeah, I hear y'all, and I appreciate what you have to say on it. Thanks, guys.
Thank you for that.
Thank you for
Nicely
that.
put.
Yeah. I mean, everybody's trying, you know, trying to do their best, and there are, you know, fears or, you know, concerns at all levels to make sure we get it right, right? And so sometimes we over policy ourselves.
But there's also opportunity. I always look for every barrier is also an opportunity. You might be able to find a partner that's not your organization that may have that as their mission, that may be able to support you to make sure that whatever you need that you can't provide is provided by a partner. And that's what Job Corps had to do to come out of its box and think differently about partnering and opportunities so that the recipient of our services really gets premium quality services and outcomes. And so you can't stay in your bubble and say, change. It doesn't move that fast up the federal pipeline. It really doesn't. Things that we want to change don't change that fast. They're layers. Trust me, they're layers. But if you partner, you'll be surprised how exponentially you can increase the power of your program. I think partnership is key to everything, and that means conversation, getting out of your comfort zone, talking to folks, saying, hi, I'm Penny. This is who I work with. Maybe we can do something together. It may not always work, but nothing beats a failure but a try. So partner.
Hi, thank you. I just want to ask, you guys do provide those technical assistance webinars on the GPS platform, but I'm not exactly sure, are the webinars supposed to be for your state partners or for any partners? Because sometimes I'm not sure, I guess it's kind of the same question, but like the layer, like there's lots of layers, I guess. I work at the board level, so we have to go through our state, but like our state partners, should they be on those calls? Or like, are we saying we'll be on the call and like we say, oh, I heard this, do we report it to them? So I'm not really sure who is the audience for those webinars.
The entire workforce system is the audience for those webinars. Whether it's Next Level Now or the OWI's Youth Services webinars, there may be some categories by audience type, like a participant type, youth, dislocated worker, regional monitor advocate, but it's available to the entire workforce system.
I would also add that they're recorded and posted after the fact, so maybe if there's ever a question, like maybe this isn't relevant to me, but then you decide it is, you can always share that out with folks, and we post executive summaries as well for folks who don't want to maybe watch the whole hour, or however long they are, but yeah.
And can I say that those are some great resources that you have there on GPS?
Thank you.
Workforce GPS.
Thank you. You know,
All
and
right.
that's what we have right now. You know, there's a few ways in which we can interact with you all. And if there are other different, better ways that we can, that if we have the ability to do that, please do let us know. If you like one thing more than another, please give us that feedback. It's super helpful. So, you know, we just want to continue to have this conversation with you all because we want to be able to like help from our little seats in DC or in Atlanta or wherever we're sitting to be able to support you so you all can do the best work you can on the ground with the young people. So please do reach out to us and let us know how we can be supportive.
Kim, do we have time for maybe a final thought?
Absolutely.
All right. Molly, final thought?
Final thought. Okay, so we diverted a little bit from where I have expertise and can offer, but I do want to just leave you guys with a little bit of context, specifically talking about some of the supportive services and how that can sort of be incorporated, you know, with what I was talking about previously with infrastructure. So, you know, billions of dollars, literally, coming out of the federal government into infrastructure sectors, standing up career pathways with a massive demand for workers. Youth can and should have a piece of that. And I'll note, just in one example, you know, there's a lot of flexibilities, specifically with some of the stuff that we're talking about here, about how do you fund some of the things that we want, like those supportive services. For instance, you know, the Department of Transportation, if they're standing up, they get formula dollars just like we do out of WIOA, right? Out of their own formula program. The Federal Highways Administration has a new flexibility out of infrastructure that says they can use as much as they'd like of those formula funds on supportive services for their workforce. I think you want a piece of that for your youth, that you can get into a partnership with a DOT if they're looking to, you know, they're always looking for people to come into their construction pathways and to, you know, start working on a highway. There's always a highway being built somewhere, and even more so now with all this huge infusion of cash. These are opportunities. I mean, you know, the WIOA only has so much money. I think we talked about that. Like, we can serve a piece of the pie. Transportation has a lot of opportunities, and, you know, that's just one of the major departments that's getting funding out of the bipartisan infrastructure law. Energy has flexibilities. EPA has flexibilities. Commerce has flexibilities. And you have counterparts of all of these federal departments in your communities, whether it's at the state level, some of them regional, if you have a port, if you have, you know, some sort of transit system locally, those are all your local DOTs and, you know, what have you. And wastewater, you have a connection to, you know, maybe the EPA, you have a connection to your energy local liaison. There are all ways that you can not only like make that local partnership, but then get a piece of the pie of that money that's flowing down federally, which frankly offers a lot more flexibilities than what we know WIOA has been previously able to provide. And even now, as we're talking about hopefully, you know, better messaging those flexibilities, even so, the other partners, the other federal counterparts, they have a lot more leeway, and you should really get a piece of that.
So if I can summarize, though, what Molly just said is there's billions and billions of dollars going into transportation, energy, EPA, that money is in your community for workforce development, and they basically need you to tell them how to spend it on workforce development. We talk a lot about how it's a lot of workforce dollars not going directly to the workforce system, so being aware of where those dollars are in your community is key.
Yeah.
Sarah had a lot of final comments. Did someone just, sorry, chime up again?
Thank you.
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
go get that money.
Yes.
Penny, any final thoughts?
And again, I still want to reiterate, my final word is on partnership. And so looking for, in addition to the money, looking for partners that you can work with to help provide the services that you're having challenges with. Also, Job Corps partners. Our region partners with TVA because they're looking for employees. And so our youth are the employees of the future. And so we have to train them, and they're looking for well-trained, employable young people. And so, because the workforce is my age, you know, we're aging. We're getting closer and closer and closer to retirement. And so we need the workforce of the future. So please partner. We partner with Johnson & Johnson. We partner with TVA. We partner with Mercedes-Benz. So we have a lot of partnerships because industry already recognized the workforce shortage largely as a result of the pandemic. And so now it's very hard to fill jobs, so we need to prepare the workforce of the future, actually the workforce of now and the workforce of the future. So please, if you take nothing else away from my conversation, it's finding those partners, and I want to partner with you. So there are 6 other individuals who do just what I do, and you can reach out to the regional directors for the Job Corps regions, and you'll be able to find out where the centers are in the states where you're located. You can find out who the regional directors are, who can connect you with the centers where the students are for employment opportunities or additional training opportunities that you might have. So we can work together to help our young people do better.
May I suggest, I agree with that 100%, but the same way that you did it with the Development meeting where I have Job Corps, Youth Bill, and all these other different entities that provide those services to the youth. So I hear you loud and clear, but sometimes that takes time away from me to have to go find these partners.
Understood.
Sell them the product. So if you just add that mandated piece to that youth level, it makes us do something.
Good
Copy that.
feedback.
Renata, any final thoughts? You said them all.
Thank you all for, I'm speechless. Thank you all for your time and your really great questions and the conversation. And I would just encourage you, keep the conversations going with your state partners as well as your federal partners.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you all for sticking around, and I am going to just put in a plug for Next Level Now because I am the liaison with Next Level Now with NAWDP, and we will be doing a webinar tomorrow on braided funding and leveraging resources, so really how to work with those partners and really, find other funding opportunities to stretch those WIOA dollars. So I know you're here at the Youth Symposium. It's going to be at 12:30 tomorrow, but it will be recorded. So look for it in about 1 week because I know you'll be at workshops tomorrow, but I did want to put that on your radar that is coming through Next Level Now. So thank you to the Department of Labor. You all were amazing. Thank you for accepting the invitation and giving us so much information. So thank you all.
Sorry we kept you over.